Hello and welcome. I'm JP Miller of the Empire Report, and we are thrilled to host this forum on family caregiving, crisis in the making in New York State. This is an issue important to all New Yorkers, especially those aged 50 and over. Our panel today is being moderated by political reporter for Fox 5, who we all know, Morgan Mackay. Our panel is made up of both legislative and policy advocacy experts. We will be joined by Senator Cordell Clear. Senator Clear is Senate Chair of the Committee on Aging, as well as Assembly Member Ron Kim, who is Chair of the Assembly Committee on Aging. We also have AARP Associate State Director Kristen McManus, as well as Merrill Manthe, Volunteer Advocate. I want to especially thank AARP New York for sponsoring this forum. And here to open our discussion from AARP New York is David McNally. David, take it away.
JP, for hosting this discussion on a topic that is vital to so many New Yorkers, the unpaid family caregiver. Family caregivers are the backbone of our long-term care system. Our population here in New York is aging rapidly, and every day, more and more New Yorkers are stepping up to provide essential daily care to an older adult loved one, while also juggling their own jobs and other family responsibilities. An estimated 2.2 million caregivers are in New York caring for their loved ones every year. But there's a crisis in the making when it comes to family caregiving. Governor Hochul's budget proposal cuts more than $9 million from home and community-based services administered by county offices for the aging. And there's already a huge list for those services. We need more investment, more resources for the growing number of family caregivers, not less. ARP New York has conducted a survey of 1,300 New York residents who are registered to vote, who are 40 years of age and older. We wanted to find out their opinions on caregiving, their experiences on caregiving, what they think the state is and isn't doing to support family caregivers, and what they would need or do need as family caregivers in providing the care for their loved ones. We found that most people taking care of an older loved one are also working while raising their own family. Nearly all of them incur expenses while caring for their older loved ones. And the majority say they do not believe New York State government offers enough support for unpaid family caregivers. They are overly stressed, physically, emotionally, financially, and very concerned about the care they or their loved ones would receive in a nursing home or other adult care facilities. And those concerns are justified. The state's long-term care ombudsman program is woefully underfunded and has been for years. This is a program designed to serve as another set of eyes and ears for nursing home residents and their families. Yet it lacks the state funding to do its job adequately. The name of this vodcast is a crisis is brewing. I would say the crisis is already here. People are struggling. They need help. They need assistance. And the state needs to stop kicking the can down the road, thinking that somehow this is just all going to work out as the population continues to increase in age and the number of caregivers swell. It's a fact. Family caregivers, as well as the Ombudsman program, need more support than what the state is providing now. And I'm looking forward to this great discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, David. As we just heard, family caregivers play a vital role in our communities by ensuring our aging loved ones can remain in their homes for as long as possible. The support system that allows them to do so is struggling, mostly because a lack of funding. So let's go to our panel with more. So first we have Senator Cordell Clear, who's the Aging Committee Chair for the Senate, Assemblymember Ron Kim, who's the Aging Committee Chair for the Assembly, Kristen McManus, the Associate State Director of Advocacy, and Meryl Manthe, the Volunteer Advocate of AARP New York, who might be having some technical difficulties. Looks like we've got her. Awesome. Perfect. So we have everyone here. So let's just start out with first a survey that was conducted by AARP that shows that in 1,300 New York registered voters, ages 40 and older, just some of their reaction to some of the lack of funding. So let's start out with, let's start out with Meryl Manthe with AARP. Can you help just kind of explain what have you seen in your personal experience?
Sure, absolutely. I caregave for my mom while she was alive, and we did a lot of research into finding an appropriate place locally. And we got lots of recommendations, only really to discover that it was upon checking between myself and my two sisters, and we go at various times, it was sort of a one flew over scenario. My mom wouldn't get a shower because she missed her time. They dehydrated her because she had to go to the bathroom so much. They put a catheter in her. It was just really very, very poor care in what was supposed to be one of the better facilities on Long Island. And it's just disturbing as a baby boomer myself. My other friends are experiencing the same. And now we all kind of wonder ourselves, is this going to happen to us?
Exactly. And that's something we're trying to really focus on is just, everyone gets older. So Kristen McManus, if you just kind of want to help explain, just what did you really see in these survey results?
Yeah, thanks. I think one of the biggest takeaways from these survey results is across the board of everyone that we polled, women, men, regardless of political party, race, or ethnicity, regardless of age, there is a huge, strong support for the government funding these kinds of programs that can help family caregivers, which is why it's even more surprising that we saw a cut to these programs in the governor's executive budget, knowing that there were a waiting list for these services, that there are families and family caregivers who need this help. The budget cut this funding. And again, we rarely see the kind of support that we've seen in this poll for these programs.
Exactly. And just again, this poll says that nearly 4 in 10 voters 40 and older have experience as a family caregiver. So as Assemblyman Ron Kim, I know you have a lot of personal experience with this. So could you just kind of help explain your reaction to these poll results?
Thank you so much, Morgan, and thank you, AARP, for sponsoring this very important topic, and of course, Empire for streamlining this forum here. And the senator, and I both come from a point of very personal experiences where we both were givers to our own family members. I recently lost my parents, my mom to COVID, and my dad to cancer. And as the only child of immigrant parents, I was full-time caregivers. And so I was able to not just talk about policy, but live through the personal experiences and difficulties, challenges, and the traumas that caregivers go through every single day in our state of New York. That's why the senator and I and many others are very passionate about not just restoring what the executive is trying to cut, but expanding to eliminate any waiting list that families may have in the state of New York. And we often come on these forums and talk and frame this as a moral argument. Of course, it's moral to take care of our older adults, but it's economically sound, because for every dollar that we invest into family caregivers, we could potentially save hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions, of Medicaid costs down the line. So the upfront investment is so critical when it comes to caregivers.
Exactly. And I'm so sorry for your loss again, Assemblyman. And Senator Cordell Clear, if you could just kind of help explain, what was your reaction and what are you hoping to bring forward to other members in your conference? I think your mic is muted, Senator. Sorry about that.
Okay. Better? Okay. Yeah, first of all, I really want to thank AARP for keeping issues like this, the spotlight on issues like this, and keeping us focused on things like caregiving. As the Assembly member mentioned, when it comes to a conversation about caregiving, I can speak to it having been the primary caregiver for both of my parents in their final years. And I made that decision, took the responsibility to be their caregiver, because I wanted them to have the time, the love, the dignity, the care, the respect, and the familiarity of a loved one when they were most vulnerable and dependent on someone. And there are many families who do that, and they should be supported. I recall the tension between the caregiving and my full-time job. I know how hard it is to get just a few hours of care, or what it is like to be waitlisted for services. And according to this study, African-American caregivers have been giving care 5.2 years and more, for 5.2 years and more often than others. The care situation is high intensity. Furthermore, the average African-American caregiver provides 31.2 hours of care per week, while still work at least 37.75 at a full-time hours at a full-time job. When you look at this picture, you can only include one thing. It's time for the state to step up and support our millions of familial caregivers in ways that enhance services, support, and collective quality of life. And we have to also look, I know in my community, you have young people taking care. We have children who are caregivers, teenagers who are caregivers that really need to be supported, that don't have time to fight and advocate, don't even have the wherewithal or know how to fight and advocate. And what I hope to happen in this conference is for everyone to recognize, if we're all lucky, one day we will be older New Yorkers ourselves. And we would want the care. We would want our loved ones to be able to take care of us and be with them. And you want to be in your community, stay at home. You don't want to be institutionalized or live in a facility if you don't have to. I really hope that several solutions of the caregiving crisis will emerge from the 24-25 budget. First, I hope that we close the wait list for senior services once and for all, so that familial caregivers can access the full spectrum of home care services for their loved ones when they need a break. And second, I hope that we make progress on a plan to provide direct financial support to unpaid family caregivers who on average spend over $8,000 a year to care for their loved ones. And thirdly, I hope we fix and fully enact fair pay for home care and save the related CDPAP to avert caregiver. So every caregiver has a robust backup or can step in and direct their loved one's care and be paid for it.
That's hugely important, Senator. Thank you so much, and I'm so sorry for your loss as well. If you could just help explain, Senator, just how important is it for a lot of these family members, and you mentioned it briefly, to stay in their communities, to stay in their home. When you're talking to your parents, for example, just how important was it for them, and what did they tell you?
Yeah, it was important for them. I can tell you, most importantly, they felt respected. It was dignified. They were in a community that was familiar to them. They didn't have to leave and be put away somewhere. Their friends could come, other family members could come and see them. And I know that it made their final moments and their final years much more pleasant, and even extended their lives and their quality of life. Because they were able to be there and see everyone and know that they were loved and they were cared for, and they got the attention that they needed and deserved.
Exactly. Now, Kristen, when you have experiences, do you have experience as a family caregiver, and what are some of the challenges posed to someone who is a caregiver?
Yeah, I do have experience as a family caregiver, and all credit to my mom. She did the majority of caregiving for my grandma. But I would go over and visit with my grandma. I would stop at the deli on the way, pick her up milk and cold cuts, other food that she wants to eat. When I'd get there, I'd clean out her refrigerator, give her the new groceries, take out her trash. Then I'd take her out to the diner and we'd have a nice meal together and sit and chat. And I think that's probably the family caregiving experience of a lot of people that wouldn't even think of this as family caregiving, right? It's just, I love my grandma. I want her to have a good meal and I want to spend time with her. And of course, my mother was doing much more intensive family caregiving, like medication management, making sure that she was able to, bathe and get dressed every morning. And I think there really is a broad spectrum when it comes to family caregiving, but regardless, it does take time, it takes money, and it takes a lot of emotional investment, which is why we're supporting these non-Medicaid home and community-based services, because it's just a little bit of a break. If you have someone who can come and deliver a meal to your loved one, they can spend time with them. That's one less meal that you have to make as the family caregiver. It's just such a common sense solution that helps older adults and helps the family members that are caring for them.
Exactly. Now, Assemblyman, what have you experienced, and what have your constituents come up and told you as the Aging Chair Committee, as a committee chairman?
Yeah, I have I was fortunate enough to have my dad pass away at home. We chose home hospice as an option, even though institutionally they were trying to push him into a facility. And when we reached that phase, my dad really wanted to be home. I wanted to see his grandkids. And I would say, I would attest that after a long journey of caregiving, having those final days at home meant the world to me and my family. And this is really about the families that are moving on after end of life, and the impact that it has on us in our society. And that's what I also mean by the economic impact. Because right now, there are thousands and thousands of families who feel immorally injured that the system did not give them the option to spend that quality time with their loved ones. And what is the impact that they have on those individuals? They no longer want to be productive in our society. They, instead of, many of us are privileged enough, like the people on this, panel, that we've turned some of our pains and traumas into purpose in helping others. But there are many others who just simply have given up, that said, this society is not working, and I no longer want to work hard for our community. And that is not good. That means that people who could do more for all of us are not doing that work, and it would impact all of us. That's why, for me, I think it's critically important that we get this right, so people can understand that our government, our communities are giving you that space to mourn, to grieve, to recover, so you can move on with your family in our communities.
Exactly. Now, as someone, as you know, the Governor Kathy Hochul proposes a budget, and then you guys all negotiate that budget together, the Senate, Assembly, and the governor. Now, what is the governor proposing when it comes to helping family caregivers?
Well, the governor has cut some of the programs that the senator and I fought to put in to tackle the waiting list. But fortunately, this is just the beginning of the negotiation. And in the next 1 month, we plan on restoring and expanding on some of these budget items. It's not a lot of money that will yield so much return for our state. I'm confident as the first woman governor of New York, who's truly, when you do speak to her, when you get a chance to speak to her one-on-one, who truly does understand the importance of family caregiving, who understands of creating a caring economy, that she will, stand with us and celebrate a budget that truly speaks to the heart of our caregivers.
Exactly. Now, Meryl, could you help explain, what is your experience and what are some of these cuts that are being proposed and how would they impact in your experience?
Well, for instance, when we talk about the nursing home, the long-term care ombudsman program, I mean, my sisters and I acted as the follow-up for her care when we really should have folks, and there is a program in place, but it's just woefully underfunded, that can at least go to the nursing homes and see that things are happening appropriately. Any cut already to the woefully underfunded is just, I don't even know where to go from there. And I think we might see a mass exit of people from the state if they feel they can't get the services that they need. It's I really can't even talk to the impact that that would have. It's just there's a disconnect between the words and the actions, is the way I see it.
Yeah. Now, Kristen, how important was that long-term care program during the pandemic, and what needs to be boosted there?
Yeah, like Meryl said, this program is unfortunately woefully underfunded. We know that the staff and volunteers who work for the long-term care ombudsman program want to be a regular presence in these facilities. They want to be able to be there once a week, get to know the residents, really make sure that they're getting the quality care that they deserve. And just to drive this point, when somebody's in a nursing home or a long-term care facility, that's their home. That's where they live. So we should make sure that they're being treated with the utmost respect. Unfortunately, what we found for the long-term care ombudsman program and the cases that they've been able to work through, the complaints they've been able to receive, is not always the case. There are people who are facing issues of neglect and abuse, and even much less serious but degrading cases that they're seeing. So the more funding that we give them, the more they'll be able to be a regular presence in these facilities and really advocate on behalf of the older adults, which we know they want to do. They just need, again, $15 million, which in the full picture of the state budget is nothing. It's barely anything.
A drop in the bucket for sure. So, Senator, what's a cut that you're really focused on, and what are you going to be proposing to combat that?
Well, the wait list for senior services is a major cut that we have to fix. I mean, all of these things are important. The long-term care ombudsman program is very important. This is a proactive approach that we're trying to get funded, and not necessarily just a complaint-driven approach, but people who are already there on the ground, making sure that nothing goes wrong in the first place for a complaint to occur. That's one of the most horrifying things, is to have, it's like a child, worrying about your child in daycare, or worrying about your child in school, worrying about your parent or your grandparent or your loved one in a facility is also very stressful if they're not getting the correct care, and God forbid neglected or abused, as was mentioned earlier. So those are very, very important things. And also, we have to make sure that we are supporting caregivers. because it is, as the assembly member said, it's an economic advantage when you have loved ones who can take care of their families at home. It's a win-win all the way around. But we've got to give a little support, and it's less than what it would cost to have someone in a facility all the time. So I think that, all of these things have to be hit all at the same time. We also have to look at how we're bringing nurses into the pipeline to make sure that we have coverage in all of these areas as well. We have to put our money where we say our heart is. And if we care about seniors, 15 million, 20 million, it's not by comparison for the fastest growing population that we have, for the people who have lived and worked hard all their lives, raising families, working jobs, serving our cities and towns and villages, for them to have their golden years, their end of life, just carelessly, handled or not with the most care that we can give them is criminal. It's not right.
Exactly. And Assemblyman, I know you have personal ties to this long care ombudsman program as well, especially during the pandemic. And I know you've fought hard for this program. So I guess, what do you think is needed? What kind of conversations do you think is needed? And just how important is a program like this? And what other cuts are you focused on?
Yeah, I would also really just thank AARP for standing with us throughout COVID and really highlighting the importance of holding these facilities accountable at a time when we went the other way. We stripped away people's rights in these residential places instead of strengthening their rights and putting more oversight. AARP was right there, front and center, fighting with us to restore people's rights and enhance the LTCOP, Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program. Their study that they did last year really highlighted the importance and the lack of care that people were receiving in these facilities. And with that study, the senator and I were able to put an increase of funding. And even with that small funding, we saw an increase in the visitation by the ombudsman in these facilities. So instead of going in that trend, once again, the executive cut the program and making us start from resetting and making us fight from zero. So I'm hopeful that once we sit down with the governor, that she understands all these things, and instead of going back and forth, we finally get to a point where we can scale up the program to make sure that every facility has the visitation and advocacy and the watchdog to hold some, not all the, many are good operators, but the bad ones must be also held accountable in the system for everything to work.
Exactly. Now, you guys also talked about the meal programs. Meryl, what else are you focused on in this budget this year?
The meal program didn't necessarily apply in my situation, but we did withdraw my mom from the home. And we ended up having to contract privately with some aides because they weren't getting paid enough by the agencies. $13 an hour. I can't even fathom anybody caring about anybody at $13 an hour. So to me, it would be more support for the family, not even the family caregivers, the external caregivers, to assist the families in helping with their loved ones, because we just can't do it all. I just didn't work for a year, and luckily I had the flexibility. I'm a realtor. Okay, that's fine. But I really needed the support of people who understood how to handle those situations, because I certainly didn't get it. The caregiver, she had my mom wrapped around her finger. I'm like, wow, I would have been head to head. I would have been almost, and it was great. It's like, wow, how did you do that? So without them, I really don't know what I would have done. And we basically stole them from an agency and contracted with them privately, because that was the only way to get it done.
Yeah, they're so important, and they do sometimes help alleviate some of the stress with parents. But Kristen, if you wanted to just wrap it up and just talk about, again, just how important this is and things that you're watching out for.
Yeah, thank you. I think first I have to thank our aging chairs who have just been such strong champions for older adults, for family caregivers, on all of these issues. And I'm really happy that they were able to be with us here today. And Meryl, thank you so much for sharing your story. I think Meryl hit on something that's really important for us to note when she said that she had to take time off of work to care for her mother. We know from our surveys that family caregiving is overwhelmingly a women's issue. Women are most likely to do the caregiving. Our profile of a typical caregiver is a 58-year-old woman who's taking care of her mother. Very often, these women have to either move to part-time work or they have to leave the workforce entirely. When you're 58 years old, that's when you should be in your prime earning years, putting aside your money for retirement, maxing out your earnings for Social Security. And instead, these women are taking time off of work. We already know that they're paid less, particularly women of color. They're spending their own money on this family caregiving. It's just, this is how we perpetuate systems of inequality. And we have the opportunity. We know what one of the fixes is. It's just a small investment in making sure that family caregivers can continue to live their lives while their family members can get the care that they need in their home where they want to be. So I just, again, thank you to our aging chairs, because I know that they get this better than just about anybody. And I know that they've been fighting for us in the state budget. And I really look forward to continuing the fight with them.
Exactly. Being able to retire in your home is extremely important. So thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Senator Cordell Clear. Thank you, Assemblyman Ron Kim. Thank you, Christy McManus. And thank you, Meryl Manthe. I appreciate all of you guys for being here today. Thank you so much for letting me participate in this. And I'm going to turn it over to JP. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, that was great. Thank you so much, Morgan Mackay of Fox 5, for moderating. Thank you especially to the elected officials. And also, of course, thank you to AARP New York for sponsoring this important forum. For more information, please check out aarp.org and, of course, empirereportnewyork.com. Thank you again.